Here's another example of figures of speech used in poetry. This one by the great romantic poet William Blake. And in it he talks about a world where everything is possible. To see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wildflower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. Every line is a metaphor, and the metaphor is basically the same thing. It comes under the word transcendence. That means to go beyond the ordinary categories of life. This blog post points out some of what the poem is attempting to teach us. And it asks the question, can we really see the universe in a grain of sand even as we slog through traffic? And he says the answer is yes. And that the connection between the everyday world we experience and cosmic beauty and joy is as close as the next blink of an eye. It could be the dust in the car, the mess on your desk, the swirling water in your sink. And he says that science tells us this, and that the trick, as he says here, is noticing, and that happens by unpacking the question hidden in Blake's poem. Can we really see the whole world in a grain of sand? And he says yes, because through the lens of science, even the smallest thing is a gateway to the extraordinary. But it only happens if we are willing to practice noticing. And that's what Blake is teaching us in this poem. He's using figurative speech to get us to think about how we notice the world. Now, I said every line is a metaphor or a figure of speech. In this case, a comparison. In the first line, a world is a grain of sand, and heaven is a wildflower, and infinity is in the palm of your hands, and eternities in an hour. Of course, these are all paradoxes. Can you really put a world in a grain of sand? Well, not as we normally think. Is there heaven in a wildflower? Is there infinity in the palm of your hand as you look in the palm of your hand? Is there eternity, which is endless time, in just 1 hour? It's all paradoxical. But most paradoxes can be resolved. I think one of the things that Blake is talking about here are essentially limits, and how words are inexact tools for the task at hand, which is appreciating and noticing the infinitude of the world in the palm of your hand, especially if it's holding a child's hand, or the infinitude of something as seemingly simple as a grain of sand, but which, when you explore it with a microscope, especially an electron scanning microscope, you see is infinitely possible, especially when you manipulate it and turn it into a silicon circuit, a transistor that can think. So I think what Blake says here is uses figurative language to try to point to this paradox and to get us past it, knowing full well that words cannot get us past the paradox of existence.